I decided to take it on. And when I decided to launch the journal, well, that's a funny story. Don't have a background I did not have a background in journalism. So there was a friend of mine that was an assistant city editor of a large newspaper. And I said, I want your honest opinion. And he said, yeah, what, what's going on? So I said, well, I said, you know about my mentor, you know about his uh, vision in search of fatherhood. I said, I want to launch a journal. I said, so what do you think about that? And I said, I want the truth. So he said, well, let's see. You didn't major in journalism in college. You have no experience whatsoever managing the day-to-day operations of a publication. You have no writers. You
Whatsoever.
platform.
Managing the day-to-day operations.
He said, you're not a man, and you're certainly not anybody's father.
Sound like a lot of odds against you is what he's
Yeah.
saying, right?
And so he said, you want my honest opinion? I said, yeah. He said, no. And I said, fine, I'll do it anyway. And the first group of fathers to embrace the journal and to flood my mailbox with poems, articles, and essays were incarcerated fathers
Wow.
from Maine to Hawaii. And they all kept telling me the same story. Um, I'm 35. I've been incarcerated since I was 18. I'm 20. I'm 28. I've been incarcerated since I was 16. So I was getting in the beginning, I was getting 5 or 6 letters like that, and I'm like, this is interesting, because when I would get the letter, um, here's what would happen: they would send me the material, I would publish it, send it back with a little note, and then they felt comfortable enough, so they would write me back and thank me, and then they would tell me um, how long they've been incarcerated. So next thing I know, I'm getting the same story from everybody, from Maine to Hawaii, and I'm saying, now wait a minute. They can't get on the phone and call each other and go, "Hey, what story are you going to tell her?" It wasn't. So I'm like, well, "What's going on here?" Because I just couldn't. I just could not understand how a community could allow 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds to disappear from the community, and there not being any yelling, screaming, bring back my son, bring back my brother, my cousin, my nephew. And that took me on a journey because people started coming into my life and saying, well, it's the educational system, it's poverty, in some cases, it's fatherlessness. Uh, and so, I went down this path, and so here I am.
It's funny that you say that they gave you all these lists of things, and all those lists of things that you're talking about as it pertains to these young African American men are true. But the problem that I have found in my research is that those are all byproducts of the issue. The one issue that you spoke about was fatherlessness, where it goes to anger management, domestic violence, incarceration, high school dropouts, substance abuse, mental health issues, human trafficking. All those are byproducts, but the root cause is that fatherhood issue. And I'm really glad that you're addressing this issue because it's a very important issue. And now I've been doing this Love Bay Radio talk show for now about a year, a little bit over a year. And I've had a lot of men on my show, but I was really glad to hear that I can get a perspective from, Dr. Latrice Rollins and now yourself, so that people can understand, that this is a global issue, but you can hear it from a man's perspective as well as a woman's perspective. And so I would love to, to hear about, the work in the prisons in Philadelphia, what do you think, as far as I saw this in your book, in your writings about FACT, this program, and I thought it was a really wonderful program. I'd like for you to kind of share with me, how did you get started with them, and some of the things that you notice about this program as it applies to helping our African American families.
Well, I have to tell you, it is the most dynamic, solutions-based, results-oriented fatherhood initiative that I've seen. Now, I'm not casting aspersions on the great work and the great initiatives that address fatherhood issues and fatherlessness, but incarcerated fathers haven't been brought to the table, haven't been brought to the table, and have not been included in the global dialogue on fatherhood. Fatherhood has become more than just raising children now. It's a movement. And there are no cookie cutter solutions to addressing the unique issues that incarcerated fathers have. Now, so how was I connected with the Fathers and Children Together Experience Initiative through In Search of Fatherhood? Um, uh, a group of incarcerated gentlemen, they've created their own association of Lifers Inc. And what they've been doing for the last 31, I guess now, 33 years now, they've been looking at issues, fatherlessness, school to prison pipeline, street crime. They've been doing research and designing initiatives on eliminating that, because what they don't want uh, people from their neighborhoods coming into the prison, and especially the youth. There's at-risk youth and at-risk young males. They don't want that. They basically said, collectively, we made the mistake. We're paying the price. We don't want you to do the same thing. So it was, at the time, it was SCI Greaterford, and now SCI Phoenix. That was the one institution that I had not received any uh, material from the public. So I go to the post office, and there's this huge envelope from uh, from Greaterford, and I'm like, oh boy, they all chipped in, and they want me to publish everything. So so I get to my home office, and I get this letter that goes, "Hi, great minds think alike. We've been watching and reading everything that you've been published, you've been writing about." And for a quick second, I was like, "Uh-oh." I said to myself, "Well, I hope they're happy." And so they said, "We want you to come to the prison to see the workshop that we're doing, and we wanted to have a meeting with you to talk about a partnership between the FACT initiative and In Search of Fatherhood." And so they said, "Your job is going to be to write about us." And I said, "Fine." So um, uh, here's the thing about that initiative. It's supported by state legislators. It's supported by not. It's supported by uh, businesses, uh, uh, community people. So I went there as part of the state legislative delegation. Uh, it is uh, a 13 to 14 week program. And what they do, for 6 weeks, there's vetting going on. There's vetting going on the inside, uh, where the gentleman that put this program together, they vet the fathers to see if they're eligible. And once they're eligible, they go through intensive psychological debriefing, for lack of a better phrase, and then they get fatherhood training on bonding, discipline, um, um, and in some cases, the mothers and fathers aren't together, so they get training on co-parenting. On the other side of the equation, the mothers and the grandmothers and aunts and legal guardians um, of the children that these gentlemen are the fathers of, they get training too. They get vetted. Um, in addition to getting vetted, uh, they are connected with resources, whether it's resources in terms of finding employment, um, finding housing, help with utilities, that sort of thing. So my time uh, was divided up between writing about the FACT initiative and also attending the orientation sessions for the mothers. Uh, a clinical psychologist who works with the Philadelphia Department of Mental Health uh, volunteers his time and he performed the psychological debriefing uh, for the fathers, the mothers, and the children. It's the most dynamic thing I've ever witnessed. Um, so I want to talk about my experience going to the prison. First of all, I'd never been to prison before. And so I decided, well, since I'm going to write about this, um, I have to feel it. So I can tell you it was on Friday, March 7th, 2014 at 6:15 p.m. That's that's when when I arrived at the prison. I'm still processing it. I can tell you what the color of the walls look like. I can still see the faces of the correctional officers, the guns, having to go through the metal detectors. Uh, I can still see it. I'm still processing that, even though I was there for 3 hours. So uh, I said to myself, I'm going to put myself in the position of someone who's going to prison for the first time and is not going to come back for a long time because I wanted to feel everything. So when you get maybe half a mile away from the prison, the first thing you see is the guard tower. And then the closer you get, the bigger and bigger it gets, and then you see the wall. And my stomach just dropped. And with what we did, they decided that myself and the imam, we would be the chaperones for the children. Um, there were about, I guess, 12 to 13 fathers and about 12 to 13 children. And I was more concerned about the children. I didn't know how they were going to react to being fingerprinted and having to go through the metal detector. It was no big deal to them. Uh, so we go through all that. We walk down stairs. We walk down the stairwell to the meeting room, and there's a big window in the meeting room. And I look in the meeting room window, and all the fathers are standing in front of the window. And when they catch a glimpse of their child, their their eyes sparkle, and this big smile illuminates their faces, and they clap for the children. They gave the children a standing ovation. It was just, it was almost biblical. It was like the gates were to the city were opening, and the children were going through the gates. Uh, and so the children walk in through the doors into the meeting room to the sound of applause. And then after that, of course, the children ran to their fathers and they're hugging. And uh, one there were about several workshops. The first workshop was to talk about, the children talked about how they felt on the ride to the prison. Because what this was a exercise about emotions and to show that children and fathers have the same kind of emotion. And so some of the children said they were anxious. Some said it was a long trip. one child said she was thinking about, it was so long, she was thinking about writing a letter. The father said that they were very anxious. Um, um, they were very anxious. You know, they were waiting for their child to show up. Um, and they were, some of them were a little apprehensive because, you know, they didn't know, um, you know, what the reaction would be when the child saw them. And for these gentlemen, the fact that they could see their child, that's what got them through their week. What people don't know is that incarcerated men who are fathers, is the children that get them through the day. Um, uh, Prison is a nightmare, and it's the children that get them through that day. The letter from that child, hearing the child's voice on the phone, the thought of, you know, when I get out of here, I'm gonna be able to hug my child, uh, to guide my child. So that was one workshop. The next workshop was um, each child uh, got into the center of the room. We were in a circle, so each child would get in the center of the circle along with their father, and uh, they would introduce themselves. I'm Sally, and this is my father. And the children, you should have seen the look of pride on these children's faces. Um, and then the father would say, I'm Sam, and this is my daughter, Belinda, or I'm Joe, and this is my son, Bob. Uh, then they had snacks for the children, so the children and the fathers could bond while they were eating. The most moving and emotional workshop was when uh, each father was asked to come to the center of the circle with their child and speak to the child from their heart. And one gentleman uh, uh, had his daughter join him in the circle, and he said to her, I wasn't with you. I wasn't able to be there when you were born. I wasn't able to be there when on your first day of school. I wasn't able to be there uh, you know, for your birthdays, to watch you blow the candles out on your birthday cake. You're going to graduate from high school, and I'm not going to be there, but I love you. Uh,
Hmm.
and there was another situation where there was a father and he had two children with him, and he told them that he loved them, and they said, "We love you too, Daddy." And then they said, "Daddy, when are you coming home?"
Hmm.
And um, we were all we were in tears. And so he said, "Excuse me," and he took the children out of the circle, and they went to a corner of the room. They hugged each other, and they cried. There was a gentleman who was a grandfather, and he had his granddaughter with him, and she was so overcome with emotion, all she could do was cry. And you know, he said, you know, told her, "I love you, and I'm hoping to join you." So it's very, it was very emotional. Now, here's the even more wonderful part about this program. They are resurrecting the village. The incarcerated fathers who participate in the program, they become friends and they bond. Eventually, many of them um, have been released from prison, and the skills and lessons that they learned in this initiative, they export that to the outside.
Hmm.
The mothers who've been a part of this program, the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, the legal guardians, uh, they become sisters and they become friends and they support one another. The children who in the beginning don't know each other, they become friends. it's the village. It is just the most phenomenal thing I've ever witnessed. It's just powerful. Um, it's good. I've learned so many things from this. I mean, there's so many powerful life lessons in this. Um, the fact that these gentlemen, under the worst conditions that you could possibly imagine, would find deep within themselves the uh, the strength, the courage, the energy, the brilliance, and the wisdom to research and design this program and to bring together uh, individuals from diverse parts of the community, from diverse professional backgrounds together and create this phenomenal program. It's just amazing. Um, one of the many life lessons I've learned from them, what they've taught me, and they've taught me a lot. One of the things that they've taught me is that you can do the work from anywhere and from any position.
Mm.
And people have heard about this program and they want to implement it. For instance, there is a gentleman that created the Boys Mentoring Advocacy Network in Lagos, Nigeria. He heard about the program. His name is Ola Akinwe. And he contacted them and said, "Hey, we want to get this thing going in Lagos, Nigeria."
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I
I
cannot.
understand how that is.
Yes.
Um, we basically had the same experience. Asked to bring our program to Ghana. They see the importance of this work. In Brazil and Dominican Republic and Colombia. Because as you spoke about earlier today, this is a global issue. And when you talk about these men in prison, you talked about they first go deep into the psychological piece, which is major because all of this begins in their mind. And, we start off with a class called Men and Emotions, and we
Mm,
start dealing with the emotional piece first because that emotional piece, a lot of these African American men have shut that piece off and they don't know how to put it back on. And even when it pertains to their children, and being able to embrace them and to tell them that they love them and to be able to express and even give them a hug, that's very foreign to them because that's not something that they've been used to or even been exposed to. And so I hear what you're saying. I
mhm,
know the stories. We actually have, a group of men that teach the program inside of the prison. And you're
mm.
right, when they come out, they have that life experience. Teaching these fathers how to be fathers while incarcerated is major because they have to come out. Well, some of them will be coming out at some point, some of them may not. But even if they don't, they're establishing a relationship even while being behind bars. And those kids, you are so forgiving and they love their father so much that they
Mhm,
don't care what they've done. They
mhm.
just want to spend time with them. They just want to be in their presence. And they're glad to say, "This is my father."
Funny you should bring that up because a number of these children that were in this initiative, um, they were always in the principal's office before this program started. Their grade point average was horrific. And one of the things that we noticed is when they got involved in this initiative, their behavior totally changed. They were A and B students, honor roll students. So that goes to show you the power of of uh, of this program and how powerful fathers are. As I mentioned, the first 6 weeks it's just the father getting the psychological debriefing and the fatherhood parenting training. Then the next 7 weeks, the children are brought in. The mothers accompany the children, but um, the mothers don't go down to the meeting room. It's just the mother It's just the father and the child. The mothers were had dinner, which the incarcerated fathers paid for. They went to the Olive Garden and for dinner, and where they received mentoring. It was a chance for them to relax, to bond with other women, and if they needed help with resources and that sort of thing, uh, they were given that opportunity to get access to resources and that sort of thing. And then they would come back to the prison when uh, when the workshops were over. I got to tell you, we all had a meltdown because it was so moving and so there's just no words to express how powerful this was. So we didn't do it in front of the children, uh, but after the children came up from the meeting room, uh, several of us, including me, we just wept. It's just powerful, powerful. So what we have here, as you pointed out, is we have groups of gentlemen who've been incarcerated, who are returning to the community, and they're hitting the ground running as parents. Now, one interesting thing happened out of this. Um, there was one uh, father, and his son was having real problems in school. So he found out the name of the principal of the school, wrote the principal a letter and said, I'm an incarcerated father. I'm participating in the Fact Experience Initiative. I understand my son's a problem at school. Tell me what I can do to meet you halfway to resolve this problem. And he said, I would like to get a copy of my son's test scores, uh, suspension notices, uh, classroom notes, everything that you can give me because I want to help. And the principal said it was the first time that he'd ever gotten a letter like that. And once he cleared it with the child's mother, uh, he gave this gentleman everything he asked for. It got back to the school district, to the Board of Education, and the superintendent sent out a memo to all principals that if a child's father was incarcerated,
Wow.
asking for the records and uh, suspension notes, et cetera, once it was cleared with the mother or the legal guardian to do that and to meet these fathers halfway.
That is a remarkable. I'm just so pleased that you have that support from your community, especially you talked about at the beginning, legislators and people that are involved. I even read that the mayor showed up one time or quarterly,
Mhm,
just to have that support
mhm.
from politicians and people to see the importance of this work and why it's so important, because you're right, it's losing our generation because of this. And you get this bad um, rep that all fathers are bad fathers, particularly African American fathers, uh, fathers that's in prison, have abandoned their children and they don't have any rights to them. They can't parent them, and all that is wrong and false. Because the story that you're giving us is showing proof that these fathers are incarcerated, but they're still involved and engaged in their children's
Yeah,
lives, even though they're behind bars. And they're writing letters to the principal, and the superintendent is finding this out and saying, hey, the impact of a father being engaged and involved and present, even though he may be behind bars, does not discount the fact that he can still parent his child.
yeah. I think people would be surprised. Um, even in correctional facilities where they don't have a program like this, my experience has been that incarcerated fathers are very innovative about how they continue the connection between themselves and their children. They're consistently writing letters. Um, there is one father who I quote in the book where he's worried about his child's spiritual and historical grounding. So he sends her books. In addition to letters, he sends her books. Um, eh, these fathers care about their children. And this myth about African American fathers abandoning their children, not caring about their children, is just that, a myth.
Mhm.
You
You
know,
know,
growing up, all the men in my community that I grew up with, not only were they caring about their own children, but they cared about other children in the neighborhood. They would, after a hard day's work and they were checking homework and this and that, they would be coaches for baseball teams, uh, neighborhood baseball league teams, basketball teams, or some of them, um, like if a parent noticed that their child was having a problem with, let's say, algebra, then they said, "Oh, well, Mr. Jones down the street, he, he's 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 a mathematician." So they would get on the phone. Mr. Jones, my child's having problems with algebra. Okay, I'll be right over. And they would tutor them.
that's where it goes when it says it takes a village to raise a child. You know, we need to get back to that because I mean, all the resources we have in our community, we just have to find it. You know, we just have to find it. It's there. Even with a conversation like this, and we're on Facebook Live, we're on YouTube Live, and I can see the people that come and when they leave, because this is not an important matter or an important fact to our society. I don't think they understand the importance of how a father is a foundation to his children's life that gives them that identity that they are lacking, to give them hope, that give them guidance and structure. And you know, when we have these type of conversations, now if we had a conversation about all kind of other stuff that really is not relevant to this, you'll
Mhm.
see all kind of people joining it and commenting and saying so many things about, oh yeah, and it might not have anything to do with any substance, I should say, but
Mhm.
it's just worldly stuff, and they're just all, I mean, are people fighting or cursing each other out or whatever the
Mhm.
situation
Mhm.
is. That's a highlight. Oh, we want to jump on board and have a conversation about that. But when we start talking about families and we start talking about fathers and the impact on the child and how you can even see that when this father is engaged in his children's life, you see his test scores go up, you see his behavior change, you see his mental status changes, and you would think that more people would be commenting and saying, you know what, this is something that I have a brother or I have an uncle, I know this person is in prison, I need to let them know about this show, let them know that just because he's in prison, he's not written off. Just because he's incarcerated doesn't mean that he doesn't have a impact in his children's life. He does have the ability to parent his children. But one of the things that you said, and I wanted to talk about this because this is important, that when these fathers go into prison, uh, and they're in prison and they start wanting to have a relationship with their children, a major piece to this puzzle is the fact that the mother is willing to come and bring the children,
Mhm.
you know and to be able to co-parent, you know despite of whatever happened in the past, whether they're together or not, but just to say, hey, look, you know what, we have a common cause here, we have something in common, whether we're together or not, we have children together, and it's important that they know you, it's important that they have a relationship with you, and I'm going to put all my feelings to the side, and I'm going to
Mhm.
invest in time to take my child so they can have some quality time with you is major. It's important.
One thing you mentioned the fact about African American men, particularly fathers, and not being able to express their emotions. Well, that's across the board in all ethnicities, this is probably a little off topic, but that's because of socialization.
Mhm.
When boys emerge from the womb, they have the same set of range of emotions that girls do. But when boys get to a certain age, they are socialized not to express that. And I love what you talked about vulnerability. One of the things that I've talked about and written about is that in the West, we have it wrong about strength. Um, uh, we vulnerability is strength, but in the Western world, uh, collectively, strength is viewed as weakness, and it's not. To be allowing yourself to be vulnerable takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength, because when you are vulnerable, you're taking a risk. The reason why you're taking that risk because you are standing in front of another person, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually naked, and you have no idea how they're going to respond to that. Now I'm going to take this a step further. Men test you. I think if men shut down uh, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, it's because they've done it once and they were rejected or rebuffed.
Mhm.
And particularly when it's a male-female relationship. Um, I had a situation where, um, this thing about masculinity, it impacts women too, because collectively, we don't know how to respond to you when you do show emotion, because we got caught up in this thing too about this, for lack of a better phrase, this macho thing.
Mhm.
We've been because we've been socialized to believe that a man doesn't cry, a man doesn't do this, a man doesn't do that. That impacts us, and it also impacts the relationship, because some of us think that you're aloof and cold and unavailable emotionally. And so if you have a if you're in a relationship and the woman has that concept, and the man is saying, I'm vulnerable, I'm vulnerable, I'm out here, help me. And she's like, whoa, wait a minute. He's not going to do that again,
That's
ever.
right.
Because for men, it's about trust and respect.
You're right on. I mean, you are. I mean, right on. And we teach it when we teach about vulnerability. One of the things we say is exactly what you said. Being vulnerable is a risk, but not only that. If you could picture, this is what we tell. If you could picture a man running through the airport naked, that's
Hmm.
how a man feels when he's
Hmm.
vulnerable. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and to take a risk uh, and somebody tell them that you're weak or you sound like a woman, because some women will come that way and say, you need to man up. Why express, because they've never heard a man express his true feelings. The next time that guy gets before a woman, he is not going to be vulnerable because of the experience that he had before. But when you're not vulnerable and you don't have empathy and you're not able to express yourself, you're like a man in a prison by himself. You understand, in his mind, mentally, because he was never designed to be that way. Like you
No,
said, that
no,
is a learned behavior. That is not the way that we came out of the womb, and
no,
so
because
what?
they react to pain. Look, you see, we've all seen it a zillion trillion times where a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, he cried, and the mother tells him, "Stop crying. Man doesn't cry."
Right,
Well,
right.
see, and you wonder why we have angry young men. They're not allowed to express. They're not given any space to express their emotion, and they either implode or explode. Imploding, suicide, self-medication, be it drugs, alcohol, sex, work, gambling, or exploding um, with um, violence. I'm not saying that maybe that's the reason why we have this explosion of gun violence, but um, that's what they're left with.
Well, let me tell you, Miss Sears, how we got on this uh, thing. Can we have a conversation? Uh, the Lord put it on my heart. He said, the reason you have so many angry black men
Mhm,
is because they want to be heard. And
mhm,
a lot of times they're being heard through violence because no one's listening. So why don't you create a space for them, a platform where they can talk and they can be heard, and the crime and the violence will go down. And I mean, I have to put a disclaimer on a lot of our meetings, from the beginning, say, hey, look, first we have to set the house rules, and the house rules is what's being said here stays here. That this is a dialogue, not a monologue. That if anybody makes fun of anyone in here or say anything or laugh at anyone, will be removed from the class, because this is a safe place and you can be the way that you want to be in this environment without being judged. Okay, that sets the standard, because then I tell them, because I'm going to tell you right now, you may cry in this class. You may break down, because this is a time that you haven't been able to tap in. And this is not, you've never really had a space where you could really be you. And so this is giving you an environment and an atmosphere that you can cry, you can laugh, and guys, they start talking, and then all of a sudden they start crying, and then they stop, and they like, you know what, I feel like I'm a bitch, or I'm a woman, or I can't believe I'm crying like a little woman. And I'm saying, no, 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 you got it all wrong, man. You're a
mhm,
human.
mhm,
You're
mhm.
human. You
Yeah,
have emotions.
yeah.
And so everything you're saying is right on point. And when these guys feel like they have that space where they, and even the ones that after the class, the ones that never say anything, Dr. P, can I talk to you for a minute? Everything you're saying, I have a problem with relationships. I have a problem with this. I haven't been able to express how I feel, because that is something that they've been wanting to do for quite some time, but they just haven't had that platform or that environment where they can express how they feel. And so it's wonderful to hear you share this, because somebody's listening right now. A man is listening, and he remembers that time when that mother told him, you know, stop crying, be a man. How you gonna be a man? You 5 years old, you
That's
know, or when the father leaves the house, and that little boy is there, and it's like, okay, now you're the man of the house. How are you the man of the house? You need to be outside playing with other kids. You understand what I mean? And they grow up so fast, and they bypass the things that they should have learned as a kid. And that's why you see 50, 60-year-old men still with a 15, 16-year-old mentality, because that's where they stop growing. That's where they stop excelling, And so this is especially in prison, because you really got to have this, like you said, respect, this masculinity, this macho, being a real man. You got to be tough. You can't show any sign of weakness, because I might be judged, or people might think of me of this way, and I can't let them see this soft side of me, so I got to show this hard side. But I tell them all the time, you know, you were wearing masks before the pandemic. You switch up depending
Yeah,
on who the
yeah.
individual is, depending on the environment, you know.
And, I commend you on creating that on creating this space. It's needed. Um, just to give you an example of how this uh, uh, socialization impacts women. I had a young woman come to me and say to me, she said to me, "Oh, uh, that her husband's uncle, who was a father figure for him and had helped raise him, had passed away." And so I said to her, I said, "Well, how is he handling it? Is he grieving?" And she said, "Well, he hasn't he hasn't shown any emotion." I said, "Well, does he talk about it? Has he expressed how he feels about it?" She said, "No." She said, "But the funeral is going to be in a few days." And so then she said to me, "What do I do if he cries?" So I said to her, I said, "If he cries, I said, it's your responsibility to let him know that under no circumstances whatsoever that the fact that he feels vulnerable enough to cry in front of you, that in your eyes, um, uh, he, he is still a man." I said, "Whatever you do, do not make him feel uh, that you are questioning his masculinity."
Mm.
I said, "If he cried," they said, "Well, what do you do when somebody cries?" "You run to them, you hold them, you console them, you comfort them."
Yeah, it's major, you know, when you share that, because when a man feels that he has that safe place where society looks at it as a weakness, women look at it as a strength, because that's a connection that they want to have with that individual. They want to be able to see that side. You know, they want to be able to see, you know, and hear how you really feel. And so yeah, once these guys learn this, because you know, even myself growing up, you know, and growing up in East Oakland, it's been really tough. You know, it was very difficult for me uh, to embrace my kids and give them hugs. You know, I had to make myself do that because it just wasn't something that my father did. You know, it wasn't something that I was used to. It felt very awkward, you know, but the more I did it, the easier it became. And I knew my kids needed it, you know. And it's funny because I have a son and I have two daughters and I have a son,
Mhm,
but my youngest daughter is 16 and my
mhm,
son is 18.
mhm,
And my daughter was, if she wanted a hug,
mhm,
she would take my arm and put it around her, you know,
mhm,
and do that. And my son would watch it from afar. He would watch it from a distance. And then I heard one day said, you know, you're always on top of dad. You always trying to do this. You always, and I said, son, you have the same right to me that she has. I
mhm.
said,
Wow.
you can do the same thing. You can come up to me and tell me you want a hug, or I can
Yeah.
hug you. You know, it's okay, man. It's
Wow.
not abnormal, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
So it's you know, when I look at, you know, what you were writing, and I mean, you walked us right through it, you know, engaging and working with African American fathers in prison, fathers and children together experience initiative. How did you come up with that title? Miss Sears, are you there? All right, we're going to take a break and we're going to come right back. You're watching Can We Have a Conversation? And we're talking with Miss Sears from Philadelphia, and she's explaining uh, the part of the book that she's written, engaging and working with African American fathers, strategies and lessons learned. She's talking about going into a prison in Philadelphia and how these fathers have embraced their children and how they've had relationships with the mother, and how when the kids come, they're so proud of their fathers, in spite of their fathers being incarcerated, in spite of their fathers not being there. I want someone to hear this conversation and share, because we all know someone who's incarcerated. We all know someone that's behind bars that may feel like they're limited to access to their children, which they may have, but they also think that they don't have an impact on their children or a voice. And I'm telling you that is not true. We're teaching fathers that man to man to be engaged in their children's life, even being behind bars, that they can parent their children, that they have a voice, that they can, be able to be vulnerable and express to their children, hey, look, I made a mistake. I made a bad decision, but you don't have to go that route. And I want you to know that even though that I'm incarcerated and even though that I'm in prison, I still love you. I still care about you. And I don't want you to make the decision that I made. And that it's important that they have support from the mother, that they can co-parent, and the mother understands just as much as the father how important this father is engaged and involved in his children's life. Because the bottom line here is, if that father is missing, as Miss Sears talked about, if he's missing in that life, then that way you will see the difference as it pertains to education, as it pertains to being playing a part in behavior issues. The father's role is just as important as the mother's role. It takes both. It's not one is better than the other, but a child needs both parents. That's why they have a mother and a father, and they balance. They work together so that there might be some things that mom brings to the table that the father may not have, and it can be vice versa. And so this is a conversation that is much needed, and I want to thank Miss Sears for being able to be a part of this conversation, and to experience and to share that experience that you've had when you was able to go into that prison and see the impact and the importance of a father playing a part in his children's life.
Well, thank you for having me, and I apologize for that technological glitch there. I went off the radar screen there temporarily, for which I apologize. I want to thank you. I want to thank Dr. Rollins for introducing us. I also want to thank Dr. Rollins for putting together a historic and groundbreaking literary work engaging and working with African American fathers, strategies and lessons learned. This is the first research work of its kind devoted to African American fathers. And as a result of this, uh, uh, public policymakers, fatherhood practitioners, uh, healthcare professionals and providers, social services care providers, legislators, students, educators will be using this book as a resource to provide resources and support services for African American fathers.
Hey man, I'm so glad that this is and I've read the book when she told me about it. um, I too have wrote my dissertation on fatherhood,
Mm,
and so I'm in the process of completing my new book. Uh, but my dissertation was on the Recon Mission, reconciliation through fatherhood training, teaching fathers
mm.
how to be engaged in their children's life and how to active listen, active communicate, not only with the children, but the mother, co-parenting. And
Wow.
so, because I was a single father for many years, I got
Mm,
my daughter when she was in the third grade, my son in the
wow.
sixth grade, and I have still had them for 8 years.
Wow.
So this is not a textbook, a case study. I've been through the traditional court systems. I've
Mm,
been, mistreated as a non-custodian father as well as a custodian father, and I can see how a father can get, discouraged and frustrated and say, you know what, I'll just go make another family. I don't want to fight this because I keep losing. It's costing me money, and I can't even see my child, And so, one of the things that I hear you say earlier, I heard you say earlier about this, getting these policies and laws changed, and even in the book that we didn't even talk about the racism as it pertains
Yeah,
to fatherhood and
yeah,
the spiritual part. You did touch a little bit on the spiritual part, but I mean, this racism is designed to keep fathers out of the home. It's designed
exactly.
to show
True.
fathers uh, that, well, not show fathers, but just to keep them separated, even with that public assistance and welfare and Section 8, and
Mhm.
you can have
True,
as
true.
many kids as you want. We'll pay for those kids, but the only thing we require is that the father remains out the house. That's by design. That's racism. You know,
That's true.
and
That's true.
and so we have to do different, and the way we do different is the way that facts have done it. We have to get legislators involved. We have to change some laws. We have to change some policies. We have to make services more father friendly in prison as well
Exactly.
as out of prison. And I think we'll start seeing a change. Because I always quote this thing from it says it's easier to raise strong children
Hmm.
uh, than repair broken men. You
Yes,
know,
yes, yes.
and
And I
when I
commend you. I commend you on for being a great dad, and I admire you and commend you for all the hurdles that you had to leap over uh, to make sure that you could have a dominant presence in your children's life. And I can't wait for this book to come out.
oh, it's it's going to be a great book because it's going to be one from my research that I've obtained for my doctorate, but then it's going to be a lot of personal experiences and hurdles and frustrations and anger and you know all kind of those emotions that's kicked in, and even just having that one-on-one with your children, you
Mhm,
know and when I say one-on-one, because of course I have a son and two daughters, but they're
mhm.
all different and I can't parent them
Exactly.
the same.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
have to change based on the personality of who that individual is, and that is very challenging.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So our time is up, but I do would like to, as I did with Dr. Latrice Rollins, invite you again and have another conversation, because this is a conversation. When you talked about Legos, I had a gentleman that was listening to this show that actually wrote me from Legos and
Mhm,
said that he wanted this program. And we went back and forth talking about what we can do, and I don't know what happened, but he just disappeared. But this is a global thing. Dr. Blackenhorn said it, and I always quote what he says. He says the most destructive trend of our society today is fatherlessness
yeah.
in every
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
So
So
we have
true.
to we have to address it, and we can do it as we say, strengthening families one father at a time.
Thank you
So
so much for having me.
thank you
I've
so much
enjoyed
for coming.
I've enjoyed the conversation. It was absolutely delightful.
Thank you so much. And it's as I told you before, it's organic, is not rehearsed, it's straight from the heart. And to be able to have a conversation with someone who else understands and knows the importance and the dynamics in prison, and the barriers and the struggles, and to be able to witness that firsthand. I commend you because a lot of people say, I'm not going in no prison. I'm
Well,
not going in.
the worst part of it was having to explain that to my mother. Hi, Mom. I'm going to prison.
Well, I'm sure she understands now
Yeah,
the
she
importance.
did.
Well, this is another segment that you're watching on Can We Have a Conversation? We are live from Love Bay Radio. We're live on Facebook. We're live on our Man to Man Facebook as well as YouTube. So we're asking that you share this this link, this story. I want to thank Love Bay Radio for allowing us to go live over 150 countries, straight from Canada. But I also want to give a special shout out to Jan Blue, who is her birthday today. And we pray that she have a wonderful birthday. And we love you. And there she is. And happy birthday.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Thank you.
We're going to send you a little something that you and Theo can go out and have some dinner and just enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this concludes this show. We will be doing our next show on Thursday, next Thursday. Every Thursday, you can tune in, watch Can We Have a Conversation, hear these different stories, and understand the importance of fathers being engaged in their children's life, and that we can change this narrative of bad fathers. We can change this narrative that the society says that 90% is because of fatherlessness. Well, let's make a difference and have more than 10% fathers, but have 90% fathers being involved, being engaged, being present, and being able to have relationships with their children and their ex-partners, so that we can have a stronger community, have stronger families. And so you've seen it, you've heard it here, and I'm sticking to it. See you next time. God bless you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Water enough.